first thing that came to mind was going back a little bit to the Central Michigan week. And when we talked about that game and kind of how the two teams matched up, it was a little bit of oil and water, right? Now, I think there's some of that here as well. Styles make fights, if you will, right? The old adage. Obviously, first and foremost, the one you look at is LSU's run game against Kentucky's run defense, right? That's going to be the first one that everyone points to because we've all just harped on LSU's lack of running game this week. And Kentucky would be without Marquand McCall, their all-SEC nose guard, who's 379 pounds, and the guy who's going to fill in for him is 360 pounds. So he's also massive, and they will be stout up the middle, and linebacker play is a plus at Kentucky. And LSU is going to have problems running the ball against anybody, right? So that's one of them. But there's one in LSU's favor, too, and that's the turnover margin. Kentucky, you might remember this. Whenever I gave out a Kentucky pick earlier in one of our pick segments against South Carolina, I mentioned their turnover stat. They had turned the ball over 8 times heading into that game. Now it's 9 times on the season through 5 games. Kentucky, it's 12 times on the season. They're -9 in the turnover differential. 6 interceptions, 6 fumbles. They've fumbled the ball 14 times, but got 7 of them back. So it's almost not a question of if, it's when is Kentucky going to give the ball up, and can LSU capitalize on that? And also, can LSU finish in the red zone this week?
Yeah, that's going to be a big deal, and hopefully the communication is much better this week. We don't see the snafus that we saw in the wasting the timeouts that we saw against Auburn, but LSU defensively matches up pretty good against Kentucky, I would say. I mean, Levis has had he's had his moments, but he's really had trouble going under 1,000 yards so far passing. His stats are kind of pedestrian, and as you said, Musso, they turned the ball over a good amount, and they have not taken the ball away a lot. Now, this is a really opportunistic LSU defense that we think has played really well the last couple of weeks. I mean, they were fine against Auburn, just could not tackle Bo Nix, and you're dealing with some injuries. It sucks that you don't have Stingley out there, and you're not going to have Major Burns out there. But we talked about Dwight McLaughlin playing really well. Cam Lewis has been playing really well at the safety position. So LSU still should be okay. But again, with that offensive line, it's going to be hard to run the ball against anybody. Hence, it's going to be hard to win against anybody. But I do like how LSU's defense matches up with Will Levis and this Wildcat offense.
So I'm glad you brought up Will Levis, because I again, in looking at that, it reminded me a lot of how we've talked about LSU's run game so far this year, right? It's do just enough. And that's kind of what Kentucky's passing game has done. He came out week 1 and had the 300 and whatever yard performance, and everybody just kind of stepped back on their heels and was like, holy crap, look at Kentucky. They actually do have a passing game with Will Levis and under Liam Cohn's offense. This is going to be fun to watch. But since then, it's been just enough to respect it, and you still lean on that run. Kentucky has also had a bit of an issue getting into the end zone the last couple of weeks. 16 points on offense against South Carolina. They scored 20 points last week, but only 13 of them were on offense because they had a blocked kick return 75 yards. One of those touchdowns, though, was a 41-yard touchdown pass. So it's just enough there from Will Levis that you have to respect it, and it keeps you back on your heels enough and opens up that run game. Kind of like we've talked about with LSU, where, man, just do enough in the run game to where it opens up the play action passing, or your RPOs. I know Coach O last night talked about they're completing 82%. They have an 82% completion percentage on their RPOs. So just do enough. That's kind of how I view Kentucky's passing game.
Yeah, you broke it down really well right there. Do just enough against those guys. And on offense, run game and pass game, they're really top heavy. I mean, Wendell Robinson has been awesome this year, but besides that, they have not gotten very much production out of any of their wide receivers. And we know that Chris Rodriguez is the leading rusher in the SEC, but they're still just barely in the top half, running the ball, 7th in the conference. So if you're able to take those two guys away, you have a good chance of stopping this offense, but you have to do a better job of keeping contained on Will Levis than you did against Bo Nix. And when you do get a pass rush, because as good as Kentucky's offensive line is, I think LSU will still get its chances here in the pass rush with Ali Gay and Ojulari and guys that have still had their moments, but you have to take them down. You can't let Levis run around out there the way you did Bo Nix last week, and that's going to be key for LSU's defense. But if you're able to do that, keep contained, limit Robinson, limit the running back Rodriguez, you probably have a pretty good chance to stop these guys.
What do you feel, if we could just actually real quick, because I know we haven't done this really much with LSU. We did it a little bit Central Michigan. I mean, there's another parallel, I guess, to the Central Michigan week. But this game is really interesting to me from a betting perspective, just because you have the hook in this game. And I think, obviously, I don't know, it could obviously go either way final score-wise, right? Like, who gets the win. But LSU plus 3.5, as long as you have that hook there, I feel like I kind of lean Tigers on the spread. I'm still a little bit undecided on if I think they get the win outright.
Yeah, I mean that's pretty significant. I mean, more than a field goal. I see what you're saying, but it's interesting. It's interesting for sure. And Kentucky's played down to the level of their competition already. I think like their last 5 games or their last 4 games, they've won 5 games on the season, were all decided by one score. So I definitely feel what you're saying.
So I don't know. I'm looking at that too, and honestly, I'm looking at that because I am kind of considering throwing that in there for tomorrow for the end of the 6-pack. But
Nah, keep beating against LSU.
I thought I'd bring it up a little, just a little bit here to see if you had a thought. You might nudge me in the right direction, but you provided you're not gonna tip your hand, and that's okay. I respect that, Mario.
As you should. Look, man, they're still underdogs against Kentucky. I was talking about this with my mom yesterday. We're living in a world where LSU is better than Kentucky at basketball because the last 3 seasons, LSU is the most winningest program in the SEC. But Kentucky right now is a better football school than LSU. That is the painful reality. And we talked about it earlier this week when we came to the realization that this is a trap game for Kentucky in between games against Florida and Georgia. So it is what it is, but it's good value at the end of the day, possibly.
Another reason to look at LSU plus the 3.5 potentially. LSU can go win this game, man. It's styles make fights, right? It's how we kind of started the segment. So I'm hesitant, very hesitant about this one, just because something Kentucky does extremely well, LSU doesn't, and something LSU does extremely well, Kentucky doesn't. But the thing that Kentucky doesn't do extremely well is they turn the ball over, and it hasn't hurt them yet because they're still 5-0. So I'll be honest, I haven't really watched enough of Kentucky. I watched a little bit of the South Carolina game because I had Kentucky with the points, but I didn't watch Florida. It was, it was on right before LSU, and I was doing other things. So how have they been able to overcome that is something I'm very interested to see.
Yeah, just timely plays. I mean, I got to see a good little bit of that Kentucky Florida game, and they made the big block on special teams with Pascal. They, obviously we can't call their defense opportunistic because they haven't forced very many turnovers, but the big plays they've made on defense have come in big moments, especially that block against Florida, because if that play doesn't happen, Musso, they quite possibly lose that game because we went over the stats. Levis was really pedestrian. They had trouble running the ball, and Florida could have easily won that game on the road, and Kentucky could have choked like they have done years and years in the past against Florida. But there's something to be said for Kentucky still doing that. And despite the fact that the stats are pedestrian and some of these wins are by one score, they're winning these games that they have not won in the past. And they're sitting here 5-0 against LSU. What was their win total on the season again? Like 8? They should definitely at least hit that.
I think it was 7.5.
Yeah, they should definitely hit that, and they're quite literally contending for the SEC East title right now. So those guys are feeling themselves. It's going to be a really good atmosphere, but now they kind of had to handle the success a little bit because despite all that adversity, despite everything being so uneasy, they're still 5-0, and all their goals that at least they thought were possible at the start of the season are still very much attainable. We'll see if they're able to handle that success and follow it up against an LSU team that is definitely underachieved, but really has the talent to beat anybody on this schedule left that's not named Alabama.
We'll give our final thoughts on the game tomorrow and make a pick as well. LSU 3.5 point underdogs on the road in Lexington this weekend.